When we talk about women of change in politics making a difference, you go from Condoleezza Rice, from Elijah Ransom Kuti, to even Joyce Banda, and even Ellen Sirleaf Johnson of Liberia. Women in politics have become an agenda that has been most thriving in every Nigerian mind, especially that of the women. Gender Agenda is a women empowerment political talk show that seeks to address the state of nationhood, governance and policy making for the Nigerian woman. It seeks to look at the ambiguity in gender affiliation, especially with political parties, and the representation of the Nigerian woman for and in politics. And this is Gender Agenda. Welcome to Gender Agenda. My name is Adora Onyenhire. Thank you for joining us today. Now, last week we looked at the role of the common place for the woman in the common environment, and I'm talking about rural women, even those who work in the urban centers like the market women traders and maybe even the hair braiders. You watched them in that Femme File segment last week. Today we're looking at gender justice and women empowerment. For how long we have continued to talk about women equity. Well, men say equality is far from the line, so let's look at the equity. But then what exactly is the term equity and equality with regards to women participation in politics? I'm talking about one woman who knows it better than anybody else, at least from Oxfam's perspective. She's the country's director. I'm going to be talking to the Oxfam country director. Her name is Dr. Chichi Nagolo Okoye. She's here with me to look at that subject and then see how we can also find out how programs from Oxfam has really helped in educating and perhaps also creating the orientation platform for women to get involved in politics. You're welcome, Dr. Chichi.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
It's really great to have you. Now, I know that Oxfam is made up of 17, there's a confederation of 17 organizations across 90-something countries. Now, if you look at Oxfam's reach so far, and you're talking about gender, I know you have the G20 gender equality as well. What exactly is Oxfam's role when you're talking about women empowerment and their role in politics?
Well, for Oxfam, women are the center of everything that we do, because ultimately what Oxfam wants to do is to eliminate poverty. I know it sounds like a grandiose plan, but it is one that we have constantly at the back of our mind, and we believe that it is possible to end at least extreme poverty. And to be able to do that, then you have to really focus your programming on women, because the poorest of the poor often are women, and of course within that even girls. So Oxfam is very interested in women's empowerment, in women's political participation, because it is only when you have voice that you can change the situation of your life. It is very, that's not to say that there are no men who are gender sensitive, but the truth of the matter is that you are more likely to improve your situation if you have a chance, to design programs and policies that affect your life. So Oxfam is really interested in getting women at the decision-making levels, both at the international level and the local level, the national level, and way down at the grassroots level. Because and that's the beauty of democracy, that it gives a chance for ordinary people to participate. So when democracy works well, it really benefits usually the most vulnerable, which are women.
Indeed. Now, I know that you do the Amal program for Yemen, Tunisia, and I think Morocco as well, which is an empowerment program to create confidence in women. And I think Amal in Arabic means hope, to a lot of people. What is the essence of that, and is there a replication of that also in Africa, looking at Nigeria as a whole? Because we see louder voices from the men than we see from the women. Yeah,
there's been a lot of programs, of women's empowerment program, but of course the problem is huge. If you go to every country, women are marginalized. So while Oxfam is really doing the best that they can, the resources are limited, the problems are huge, but we continue to amplify the voices of women along with other, like-minded organizations. In Nigeria, we've also taken that as a priority. So one of the focal things that Oxfam in Nigeria does is women's political participation. We want to ensure that more women, get into positions of office. But also more importantly, that women understand what it means to be in political office. Because we have, at least in the recent past, gotten a lot more women. I mean, in terms of percentages, it's absolutely nothing. But there's been a lot more women in political positions. And we're getting increasingly concerned that even women themselves are beginning to say, well, what difference has that made? And so we recognize that it's important that when women are in positions of authority, that they understand that they're not just there for themselves, that they are there, to continue the women's agenda, to amplify the women's agenda. A lot of times women in political positions think, well, I didn't get here because I'm a woman. Indeed. I'm here, in my own right. Well, maybe, but the issue is that you're there, representing a minority, so to speak. And so even if you think you didn't get there because you're a woman, it is still your responsibility, to try and raise a women's voice and to raise a women's agenda. It's a bit like having an African American saying, I'm not here because I'm a black person. Indeed. And trying not to do anything to, constantly, to totally distance him or herself from the African American agenda. You just don't do that. And so we're recognizing that it's just not enough to have women in positions of authority, but also that they recognize the huge burden that comes with that, or the huge responsibility that comes with that, and hopefully get them to be a little bit more responsive to the women's issues.
I am Senator Grace Folashade Bent, CON, a female political activist, a woman that believes that no nation can thrive economically, socio-culturally, and politically without the very involvement of female politicians in actual decision-making process and in the parliament. And when I talk about women, I'm talking about sound, articulate, credible women who are there waiting outside to be brought on board. I am therefore endorsing the unequivocally the involvement and the participation of female politicians in actual decision-making process in this country.
Now, the amount program still talking about is it started 2012. It's going to end in 2015, I suppose. Now, after that, what next? Because then that's just for the Arab, the Tunisia, Morocco, and Yemen. You also have the G20, program, which is endorsed by different, organizations. But let's come down to Nigeria. Now, a lot of women will argue with you that it's not a problem of representation, it's acceptability by political parties. Now, you see where you have lots of women leaders, but that's all they get. Most of the political parties, whereas you have 70% of the world population are women, and most of them are poor, and only women can actually understand their own plight. What is the role of Oxfam also in engaging with politics in the political parties to see how they can also create platforms for women?
Well, the Nigeria is slightly different. It's slightly difficult in the sense that because we have a presidential system that is very much mirrored along the American lines, every single position is contested. Unlike in a parliamentary system where the party wins and then they appoint positions. So you find that a lot of countries that have the parliamentary system or a combination of both tend to do a little bit more for women, because then the party can then influence who's in office. In Nigeria, because every position is contested, parties want to put their best foot forward, so to speak. And so a lot of them don't feel that women will win for them, because a lot of what they want to do are really not democratic, and a lot of women are unwilling to to participate in the political process or to do the things to do the needful in order for the party to win. So a lot of parties will say to you, it's not that we don't want women or we don't think women can, do the job. They just can't win because they're not ready to do everything that needs to be done. That takes us to a separate to the next level to say, well, why do we have a politics in which, it is not issues, it is not democratic principles that are actually, ruling and ensuring that this is the way, things are done. So part of what we're trying to do is exactly what you said, to engage with the political political parties, to engage with INEC. The last time the director for Oxfam Novib was in Nigeria, she met with the INEC chairman, and some of the programs that we're supporting, it also includes working with political parties. But like I said, it is difficult. And that takes me to a next thing that, in Nigeria, a lot of women, and it's not their fault because this is the politics that we play. Everybody is looking to be given something. The political parties will not give women space. Women have to take it. Women have to forge that space for themselves and, ensure that they are, that their voice is heard. So all we have been doing have been begging for 35% and begging, for inclusion in this and begging for this. When you're the majority, you don't beg, you take. And that for me is another important aspect of trying to get women in political parties to really begin to look at, the agendas of their parties and to say, well, where do we belong? It's going to be difficult for you and I to do, even with an Oxfam with all our intentions. It is the women who are in politics who need to create space for themselves, who need to begin to organize within the political parties and to say, we no longer want to be the dancing wing of the political parties or the singing wings or the cooking wings of the political parties. So the women in political parties, really are the ones who have to, to push that agenda, to push their parties, to push the leadership, to stop only taking positions that are the women leader. Because for most political parties, there's nowhere else that women feature. Why can't women be the head of a political party? Why can't they be the chairperson of a political party? Why can't they take on, some of the critical positions? So I really think, so part of what Oxfam is doing is also getting women to register in political parties. Because, without a critical mass in the political party, you can't change things. And sometimes, I go to the level of saying, maybe it's time to have a strike in the political parties, what I mean? To say, if you don't give us this, we're going to put down the party. So, I do agree that there is a space for development organizations, but development organizations can only support what women themselves who are in parties are doing. And I think that the women in parties really need to, step up the game.
All right, now talking about gender justice, I know that India is one classic case when we look at women's parity in governance.
Rwanda's done very well.
Rwanda's done very well, but India is still up and coming. We've seen a series of domestic violence against women in India, and beg your pardon, a lot of the argument resonates that perhaps if more women were given the chance to actually doctor their own needs within the purview of power and perhaps politics, it would be better. I think only 10% of women are in that part of the world. And then you look at, I think you remember the 25th April, Tunisian women went to the parliament and they held a protest and said, it's time we took our lives into our hands. It's time we got more representation. Out of all the 520-something, parliament representatives, only about 20-something or 15, and that's poor. So let's look at raising her voice, which is one of the things that you do. What other medium? Because you're looking at the rural women who is at the end of all of this. How can they get involved in governance? Because it is to them who the power really is important to.
You know, the beauty of the Nigerian system is that we have a local government, we have a state, and then we have the federal. Usually all attention is at the federal level, which even if it changes, will make very little will change in the lives of the ordinary people who are at the community level. So one of the things that we're trying to do is, you know, educating, voter education, political education at the grassroots level. And that needs to be done more. The National Orientation Agency really needs to go down. Yes, that's their mandate. They need to go to communities. They need to help communities form, you know, groups, youth groups, you know, women groups, you know, and really begin to educate them. And then people need to get involved with the local politics. People really need to begin to engage with their local government. And that, for me, is one of the reasons I'm quite saddened by how the local governments have been pretty much pulverized. You know, the local government in Nigeria really have become just an appendices of the state government. Yes. And there's no structure, you know, there's so much changes, you know, today there's a chairman, tomorrow is a caretaker committee, the next time it's something else. And so that level of governance where you really have people living in, which will be the most functional, you know, and the most structured, is unfortunately the most dysfunctional, and the least likely to meet the needs of people. So I think that one of the things that we need to do is to pay more attention to that level of government, to really begin to, you know, increase the voices of women at that level. And I know that a lot of development organizations are doing it. Oxfam is doing it, you know, CY is doing it, the Ford Foundation. A lot of people are supporting programs, you know, to educate people at the grassroots level and to help them understand democracy and begin to participate a lot more in it. We also have to recognize, of course, you know, that we come from a military history, and that has a major impact on the way people see governance. We still see governance as not, you know, of the people, but something that the people have to serve the government as opposed to the government serving the people. So there's a lot of work to be done to demilitarize the Nigerian mind.
Even in a democratic setting.
Yes, you know, and unfortunately, the kind of democracy that we have in Nigeria has also continued to promote that type of thinking. So you have, you know, a democratic government that is almost like an autocratic democracy. You know, once you ascend into a position of authority, you become an overlord. You know, and people begin to bow and you know, and there is no, and of course, because you're the one who's benefiting from it, you're not saying, well, this is not what democracy is meant to be. You're not trying to change it, but you find that as soon as you leave office, you know, or you fall out of favor with the power structures, you automatically become like the rest of us, and then you begin to look for a voice, and then you begin to hope that the judiciary works a little better than it did. But when you were there, you didn't do anything. So one of the things that I try, both on a personal basis and from my work, to do is to say, you know, if this country functions, we all benefit. We all ultimately benefit, because you can't always be on the good side. You never know, because even sometimes when you didn't do anything, you know, you suddenly find out that you've lost, you know, that you've lost ground, or you've lost favor. You know, it only takes one little gossip here and one little gossip here, whether it is true or not, for you to lose favor. Why would you want to you know, function in a system that in which you and your progress in Nigeria depends on, you know, whose ass you're licking, pardon my French. You know, we really need a system that functions so that every single person, whether you're in power or you're not in power, can enjoy, you know, your life without having to pander to one thing or the other.
Let me talk about your country gender focal coordinator, Boyowa Robots. You know, she talked about a leadership, you know, orientation, some sort of, you know, platform where women can be taught leadership, which is something you said is being discussed with stakeholders to implement through Oxfam. Now, we see a lot of young girls. Now, let's talk about girls. You know, lapping and wanting mentorship from women in government, and they seem to not have anyone they want to look up to as a role model. Now, how do we begin that education and bridging that education gap and that orientation gap between the girl child and the woman in government, teaching her and passing down the trends that politics is actually rewarding if you do understand that it has to be about capacity, because everybody thinks it's about being the first lady or being in some, some ministry and having power. How do we cross that gap?
Well, I have to say that quite a bit is happening. I was at the WinBiz conference, the Women in Business in Lagos, and I was really heartened to find that there was a lot of women who are in business, the private sector, really very interested in building the capacity of young people. So it's happening in the private sector. I think the problem with the government sector is that maybe the issue has not really been raised. I think it's a very important thing that women who are in politics need to mentor other people. But I think also maybe, again, like I said, it's the nature of our politics, the fact that people are that the politics itself is so time-consuming, and so intriguing that a lot of times the women are not able to step aside and say, okay, what else can I do for my community? And I think that's where the media comes in, development organizations come in to really help bridge that gap.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chichi. It was grand talking to you. A lot of insights and a lot of information. In fact, if you go across the world, you see people, even youths, have thinking with the idea, oh, I want to be an independent candidate. And I say to them, Fuhati, because at the end of the day, you have the ruling class will tell you about godfatherism and, someone putting you up. And of course, capital plays a huge impact when it comes to stomach infrastructure with politics in Nigeria. So I think maybe what we would also understand is to work on existing structures and maybe view templates where the laws are more amicable with the women as well. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was great talking to you. I've been talking to Dr. Chichi Anogolu Okorie, and she has said one thing. She said, well, it is better that we understand that democratic education is still lacking, and then look at how well best that the political parties can fit into education and into orientation for the women. Equality and equity in government participation is the beginning of development and empowerment, because across the world, 70% of women are poor, and they are the ones who handle their families. And if they cannot get a voice, then we are yet to begin. My name is Adora Onyechere. Join me again next week on Gender Agenda. Bye for now.
I believe that women should be enabled to play their full part in all sectors of our endeavor, in politics, in the private sector, in management, and every area of our human endeavor. The women should be encouraged to play their full part.
The video you're about to watch is called 1 Million Voices. Voices of women around the world standing up and standing against domestic violence. This has got to end. This has got to end now.